So our second snippet from this week is going to look at two overlapping events. Which um, the first is kind of the transformation of the electoral college. The second is an intersection between domestic and international affairs, which leads to sort of the end of an era politically with regards to the electoral college. So the starting point here is in 1800. Thomas Jefferson runs against John Adams. Remember, Jefferson was Adams's vice president, and in this contest, Adams had narrowly won in 1796, but it's Jefferson who narrowly wins in 1800. And if you kind of get a sense of this from the map, the Federalists who are in orange on this map are disproportionately strong in New England and coastal areas in the Northeast. The western part of the country tends not to be sympathetic to the Federalists at all. So basically, the Federalists are a minority coalition, and they're losing ground, and they will never come as close as they do to any election after 1800. So Jefferson is in. Now, the Jeffersonian Party, Democratic Republicans, forerunner of the modern day Democrats, they remembered what happened in 1796 when Adams's Federalists had splintered among themselves with regards to the choice of vice president. So they instruct all, they get a slate of electors together, and all Jeffersonian electors are told you vote for Thomas Jefferson and you vote for Aaron Burr, this man who is the Jeffersonian Party's candidate for vice president. And so the Electoral College convenes. The 73 electors for the Democratic Republican Party cast their ballots for Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. Of course, that means that both of these guys have 73 electoral votes. They're tied. And Burr decides that, really being a president would be a lot better than being a vice president. And so he doesn't stand down, and he says he's changed his mind. He wants to be president. In the case of a tie in the electoral college, the race or any case where the winner does not have a majority, the matter goes to the House of Representatives. And each state's delegation in the House of Representatives has one vote. And if the state's delegation ties, let's say 3 vote for one candidate and 3 votes for the other, that state gets no vote. This is a tricky issue for in terms of what to do. So most of the states where the House delegations are controlled by the Jeffersonian Party vote for Jefferson, and they're furious at Burr for kind of undermining things. Most of the states that are still controlled by the Federalists, here in New England, vote for Burr. It's kind of a partisan vote. They see this as a way to sort of stick it to Thomas Jefferson, who they see as as the personification of evil. So the critical states become these mid-Atlantic states where the House delegations are kind of divided among themselves, and the critical person here becomes Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of Treasury under Washington. Maybe the most dynamic figure in the Federalist Party. He doesn't like anything that Jefferson stands for in terms of political economy, but Hamilton's argument is that Jefferson at least is a principled man, is capable of being president. He sees Aaron Burr as something else entirely. His judgment of Burr, I think, was correct, and he persuades Federalist House members in these mid-Atlantic states to vote for Jefferson over Burr. That swings the states to Jefferson, and Jefferson is ultimately elected president. Burr, those of you who know the history here, Burr will a few years later will kill Hamilton in a duel. The result of this is the 12th Amendment, passed in 1803, where Congress, everyone recognizes that there is a defect in the Constitution because the framers didn't understand that there would be slates of party figures in the Electoral College. And the 12th Amendment says that there'll be two separate elections, one for president, one for vice president. And if you have a case where the president there isn't a majority for the president, the top three candidates will move on to the House of Representatives total. Now, Jefferson had campaigned on a platform of strict constructionism. That is, he argued that Adams was sort of extending, doing too much as president beyond the realm of the Constitution. He says, "I'm not going to do that." It sounds very nice in theory. He doesn't apply it in practice at all. Jefferson's vision was for the United States to be an agrarian country. He believed that that would preserve American virtue. But that required two things. It required more land, because that way everyone could kind of have their own farm. And of course, Jefferson's vision is for white people and white people only. And second, it required access to foreign markets, because the Jeffersonian vision would have the U.S. supply agricultural goods to industrial in exchange for industrial goods produced by Europe. So in 1803, when France offers to sell Jefferson the Louisiana Purchase, in large part because the French attempt to reconquer the former slave colony of Haiti, sort of circling it right here with the cursor, came to naught after Toussaint Louverture's forces defeated the French. Napoleon decides, look, if I no longer have Haiti, this territory in the in the middle of North American continent doesn't really do me anything. They had the French had acquired it from the Spanish, and I need the money because I'm carrying on a war with the British. So it's sold to Jefferson. Now, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the president has authority to negotiate the purchase of land. Jefferson says, well, look, I have the necessary and proper clause, the general welfare clause, these elastic clauses, and I think he's probably right. But there's something striking here about a decision by a strict constructionist to sort of stretch the bounds of the Constitution. Similarly, in what are called the Barbary Wars. So the Barbary states are these North African states that formerly had been part of the Ottoman Empire, centered in Turkey, but the Ottoman Empire had been in decline for a couple of hundred years and gradually lost control of these countries. They were not formally recognized by the United States as independent countries. Eventually, they'd be colonized by the European powers. But in the early 19th century, the Barbary states came up with an intriguing way to pay their own way. They would finance piracy in the Mediterranean. And European countries that wanted to trade in the Mediterranean could pay them tribute, relatively reasonable cost. And so for the most part, that's what the European countries did. The U.S. approach was, well, the British paid our tribute when we were a British colony. We should still count under the British rule. The Barbary states say we don't think so. The Americans say we're not going to pay any of the tribute. And the result is that raids commence against American commercial vessels in the Mediterranean. And this is a threat to Jefferson's vision. So Jefferson sends the Navy and the Marines to North Africa, bombs the Barbary states, but does not request a declaration of war from Congress because he doesn't want to recognize the Barbary states as actually independent states. And so again, this is a striking move from a strict constructionist president, stretching the war-making power to say that he has authority to wage undeclared war. This is a tumultuous period in U.S. history. The U.S. will enter into war legally. The Congress will declare war against Britain in 1812 during the Madison years. This is a war that is very unpopular in the Northeast. And the result is this Hartford Convention in 1814, when delegates from the New England states consider the possibility of secession from the Union. The war ends before anything can commence here, but one of the effects of the Hartford Convention, which was populated overwhelmingly by Federalists who tended to be pro-British, is that the Federalist Party is it's associated with treason, and so it loses all political support. In 1816, the last year that the Federalists really run any kind of national campaign, James Monroe, the Jeffersonian Party's candidate, overwhelmingly is elected, and by 1824, the Federalist Party will cease to exist as a national entity and will be replaced. This is, if you see it in the high school history textbooks, this is often called the era of good feelings, the election of 1824, in which there is only one national political party, the Democratic Republican Party. So you would think, all right, this will be a system in which the Electoral College will work as we hoped. It's a non-party system. They'll get together, they'll elect the most virtuous man. Um, that doesn't happen at all. Instead, what happens is that the Jeffersonian Party factionalizes, and there are four candidates who get electoral votes in 1824. John Quincy Adams, son of the former president, an ex-Federalist who had moved over to the Jeffersonians and was Monroe's Secretary of State. Henry from Massachusetts, Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House from Kentucky, sort of a candidate of the West, strong supporter of a more robust federal government. The Secretary of the Treasury, William Crawford, the candidates basically of Southern Jeffersonians, this is a young Clay, this is an older Clay, and the fourth candidate is Andrew Jackson, who will be, sort of this war hero from the War of 1812. The result is this crazy map in which all four of these candidates are at least somewhat competitive. Jackson easily gets the most popular votes, but because Adams is so strong in the Northeast and because Clay siphons votes away from Jackson in the West, and Crawford siphons votes away from him in the South, no candidate comes anywhere near a majority in the Electoral College. 99 go to Jackson, 84 to Adams, 41 to Crawford, and 37 to Clay. If Clay had finished third, Clay is Speaker of the House, so this throws everything to the House of Representatives. If Clay had finished third, he probably would have been elected president, on the basis of his support in the House. But because he finished fourth, he's eliminated. Crawford is in ill health and is not a serious candidate. This comes down to a contest between Jackson and Adams. Clay goes to Adams in what the Jacksonians denounce as a corrupt bargain and says, if you appoint me as Secretary of State, which was seen as sort of like the vice president now. You'd be Secretary of State and then you'd run for president. I'll throw my support to you in the House. And Adams says, that sounds good to me. And the result is this breakdown where Adams wins his states in the Northeast and some of these Western states, thanks to the votes of Clay. Jackson, although he easily won the election in terms of the popular vote, only carries 7 states, and 3 states go to Crawford, and Adams is elected president. This race is seen as, not incorrectly, as the clearest evidence of the Electoral College simply breaking down. It will trigger a new political system, but it's part of this, this continued difficulty of adjusting the Constitution to, to sort of, the actual realities of American politics. So that's about it for our second snippet.